Intermittent explosive disorder is a psychiatric condition that will make you lose your job in like 30 seconds and ruin an entire relationship even quicker. I'm Dr. Barnett, psychiatrist. Let's get into what this is, including this misunderstood warrior gene. Let's go. So the perspective of psychiatrists is as such. So what is it first? So when I think about intermittent explosive disorder, I think about three things generally. Impulse control issues, specifically impulsive aggression, which we'll get into as it connects to the gene. Serotonin regulation, there is differences in the serotonin levels very likely, and I'm going to prove that to you shortly. And this little anecdote is really from my experience. And in my experience, there's a trauma history sometimes, often early in childhood, which then can contribute to some of the aggression that we see. So if you have somebody that has impulsive aggression and then immediately regrets it, and this is not really in their nature, or they act out, sometimes they could be aggressive in ways where they throw things and similar, or make threats or say things that can be very harsh, but then afterwards regret it, and it's not in line with their personality and it's out of proportion, then you could pretty much start diagnosing this. Now, the role of a psychiatrist, again, I think about this in terms of neurochemistry a little bit. So it starts with tryptophan. You may not have thought that it starts with tryptophan. Tryptophan is an amino acid that will turn into and make serotonin. So when tryptophan turns into serotonin, it does that with two enzymes, a hydroxylase, I'll just write that here, and a decarboxylase for the students that are watching. Okay, and the hydroxylase means it adds a hydroxy group. The decarboxylase means it has to clip off some carboxyl groups multiple times to then create this serotonin, which we also call 5-HT. Now, serotonin, once it's used in the body, in whichever way it's used, is then broken down to something called 5-HIAA, 5-hydroxy-indolacetic acid, I believe is what it is. And this is the metabolite of serotonin. Follow me here, guys. This is broken down. Serotonin is broken down into this by two enzymes. One is MAOI, monoamine oxidase, MAOA. MAOI is a group of meds. MAOI, monoamine oxidase, and then an aldehyde dehydrogenase. So when you have these two enzymes, you can then break down serotonin into this metabolite. This is the metabolite. Now, what's interesting is there's been very interesting studies where we check the cerebral spinal fluid, the CSF, of folks with this disorder and similar disorders. And what we notice is when we look in the cerebral spinal fluid, you can see differences in levels of this metabolite, which suggests low serotonin turnover in some people. Now, let's talk about this warrior gene, which is very misunderstood. I want to make something very clear before I get into it. If you have this warrior gene, it does not make you more violent. That is a common misconception, and I'm going to kind of explain the nuance here. What this gene is, it turns out to create this enzyme, there's genes that code for this enzyme. And you could have a low activity at the MAOA gene, actually, which means you will not make this enzyme as much. So the warrior gene is a gene that codes for this enzyme, okay? And what in my research and talking to folks and seeing this, when you have this low MAOA gene plus a history, and I'm going to write here trauma, particularly childhood trauma, in my experience, that could lead to a higher likelihood of developing intermittent explosive disorder, or what I'm going to write as impulsive aggression, especially when threatened. Does not mean you're more violent. So, really interesting thing, intermittent explosive disorder, and now that you understand the serotonin link, a psychiatrist is positioned to help any folks with this.